It is recording. You can see in the name.
Yes. So let me first of all start off uh, by thanking all the participants for joining in huge numbers. This is quite overwhelming for us. The second thing is this is all very new for all of us, especially for me because I've never used Zoom before. So thank you, Pandit ji. जैसे मैं पंडित जी बोलता हूँ इनको, you might call him with different names, but I call him Pandit ji. So thank you, Pandit ji, for joining us, for agreeing to organize this workshop. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. So Lok Gatha, a lot of you might not know why we started it. So we started Lok Gatha as a, especially for the generation that grew up with the internet. We have access to a lot of information, but we don't have access to the right kind of information. So anybody who is curious about Indology, or people who are interested in understanding what are traditions and what are scriptures, there is a lot of inherent misunderstandings, right? So Lokgatha is an effort to actually give some clarity to the people. We are not experts in any field for that matter. हम क्या करते हैं, हम एक्सपर्ट लोगों को जैसे कि अपने पंडित जी हैं, we bring those people on our platform and disseminate the knowledge, authentic knowledge for people to take. It's up to them then afterwards कि उस नॉलेज को लेके वो क्या करेंगे. So that's why this is the first experiment in that direction. It doesn't need any sort of introduction, but I'll do it anyway. So Pandit ji is a doctor practicing nuclear medicine in England. So training, he has done a tremendous work in the field of Jyotishi, and he's also a filmmaker. So he is the first one, in fact, who asserted that Krishna existed in film format back in 2008. So he's a deep follower of Hanumanji and Kalima, and is currently establishing houses, temples to Devi and Bhairava in India and abroad. So that's a very great thing he has done for the community and for Hindus abroad. So thank you, sir.
No, no, Ajay ji, so just to interject there, I mean, I'll tell you something. You know, the older you get, the more you sort of become more and more. I don't know how do you put it. You begin to realize your own insignificance in great degree. As a scientist, anyway, you must have already realized a little bit of our own insignificance. When you do your experiments and things like that. So we are very insignificant people, you know, and experts. Well, every day I receive a question. In the sense, I ask myself a question and I'm unable to answer it myself. So, so expertise, and one should always do that because that will make you learn. There's no end to your learning. I mean, that is the reason I would really prefer to just keep learning, and I would really, this experts, or these are all labels. You can call anybody almost anything nowadays.
So you're being modest. You're being very, very modest, because I have seen firsthand the kinds of things that you put out and the kinds of things that you practice in your daily life. So it's that we don't get people like you to come out and put out the knowledge that they have. The majority of the people that do this are either doing it for some sort of ulterior motive, or they just do it because of their misplaced egos. तो आप जो करते हैं, तो that is something which is very rare in the society.
uh,
So
this is very kind, Ajay, again. But one thing which I would like to say, one interesting thing which I'll say, there is a line in Devi Bhagavatam which says, Dhyaninam api chetamsi Devi Bhagavati hi sa balada krishya mohaya mahamaya prayachati. And the great goddess, she is having the power of, this great goddess Durga, Mahamaya, whatever you want to call her. She's having the power to completely keep the whole universe in ignorance if she so desires. You can be in ignorance your whole life. I mean, It is almost like you won't even know what happened, right? And I've spent a lot of years like that. Okay. um, those people who were in medical school with me will scarcely, I mean, they scarcely recognize me now. um, you know so ignorant, I mean. And even now I would say, the more I learn, the more more you become aware of your own ignorance. You see how little we know, how little we know. It's a palm full. We barely, there's an ocean of knowledge, right? Whether you take medicine, whether you take Jyotish, whether you take astronomy, whether you take astrology, whether you take any of the fields of medicine, whether you take, I mean, tantra for that matter, or whatever it is, it's like an ocean. You can keep studying, you'll keep studying birth after birth, and you'll never ever come to that finite, that where you say you're the master of everything. I mean, there were some greats in the past. There was Adi Shankara. There are some other greats. Adi Shankara was, I mean, what can you even say about a person like this, who, each commentary of his takes a whole lifetime for people to decipher. So each stotra, even that is taking lifetimes for people to decipher.
Yes.
So you have to remember that. So when you remember that, you become aware of just how small you are in the grand scheme of things. Vedvyasa, you look at the gigantic intellects of those sort of people. Who are we? Who are we? It's very important to keep the perspective, because you can learn a lot. You can, in fact, I mean, people become enlightened also. But even after that, enlightenment is not a fixed point. You can be ignorant over there also. There will be some blind spot. And there will be people way more ahead of you also. This is the way Devi has made it. She has made this world like this. So this is important to understand. Anyway, I was just offering my, I don't know, not wise, but older perspective. So
yes, certainly. So on that note, we remembered all the greats. To begin with, we remembered Shankara, we remembered Vedvyas, and we also invoked Kalima and other gods. So I think now it's best that you continue with what you have for us, sir.
Right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to just go to the workshop. And before I do that, let me just do that. One second. And right. And then, right. So can everybody see this? I think everybody can see this, hopefully.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. So what we have got is an introduction to the timelines of the Mahabharata war. Okay. And I'm pretty dogmatic about it, about 3067 BC, because I have been one of those few people, unfortunate enough, to hold a view beforehand that 5K dates were also good, or 1K dates were also good, and so on. And you change, for a few months, years at a time. So 20 years ago, because I'm from Pune, so therefore, I was exposed to P.V. Vartak's teachings quite early. And they used to come out in a magazine called Swayambhu. And I used to believe, yeah, 5K is possible. Then I came abroad, and then I started thinking, no, but how is it possible? Because 1K, 2K and all that sort of stuff. And then I came to a slightly different perspective. And so that slightly different perspective is basically that it has to be a 3K date. There is evidence from saints of the Madhavacharya Sampradaya. There is evidence from the saints like Namalwar Sampradaya. There is evidence from the Magh Masa Moksha of Bhishma. So Magha Masa Moksha of Bhishma itself introduces a 2.2k to 3.2k, maximum 3.8k. So 3800 BC is the maximum limit of Mahabharata, because that Magha Mas. So if you consider the Magha Mas of Bhishma Moksha, which is there in two separate powerful references in the text of the Mahabharata, then the problem arises that the vernal equinox must occur at Rohini, and that can only occur in that sort of time frame. Cannot occur before or after.
Dr. Niji, I'm sorry to interject, but a lot of us are not
I'll come to it.
acquainted with the chronology in the Mahabharata itself.
I will come to it. I'm coming to
So
it.
if you could
Coming to it. Coming to it.
yeah
Coming to
yeah
it. So I'll come to this slide
कि
a bit
पहले
later.
क्या हुआ बाद में क्या हुआ, so
Right.
right ठीक है, thank you.
So I base my entire talk today will be on 4 timelines of the Mahabharata. So first should be the mission of peace timeline, but I will talk about that a bit later. The second is the war timeline, which has the 14th war night moonrise. And so that is the war timeline, and that is also Balrama's pilgrimage timeline, because Balrama, as we well know, returns on the last day of the war, right? So Balrama's return on the war day of war 18th war day must coincide with his 42-day pilgrimage return as well. It's no use saying he's going to return later, and those, because those nakshatras for his start and for his return are well known in the Mahabharata. Pushyena samprayatosmi Shravane punaragataha. He starts on a Pushya nakshatra, he comes back on a Shravana nakshatra. Okay. And that must be separated by 42 days. That is one perspective of it. So there is a war timeline, there is a Balrama's pilgrimage timeline, there is a 14th war night moonrise which is there in that war timeline, which has to fit. So the tithi, the nakshatras, all that has to fit. The nakshatra of the last day of the war is given, which is given as Shravana nakshatra. So from this, because of the mathematical way in which the nakshatras are occurring, you can come to know max to max what the first day of the war is going to be, nakshatra wise. And you can calculate the tithi also of the first and the last day of the war, and so on and so forth. So mission of peace first, war timeline, Balrama's pilgrimage timeline, and then comes Bhishma Moksha. These are the 4 timelines. Then there are the eclipses. The eclipses the eclipse shlokas, which I'll mention a bit later, but the eclipse shlokas are all occurring before the war. So if we have to prove eclipses, there is no use saying that an eclipse occurred 10 years before the war or something like that. It has to be one in the year of the war. Two, it has to fit that your war timeline, whatever it is, it has to never come in the war timeline. There is no use saying, no, my eclipses are in the war timeline. Three, the eclipses has to be, at least by some or the other method, visible from Kurukshetra. There is no use saying my eclipse is only visible from Antarctica. So that won't do. You understand what it is. So these are all huge problems. And this Mahabharata dating, for that reason, is a quicksand of incredible proportions. It's a quicksand which you cannot even begin to imagine. And it's such a quicksand in which that a majority of the researchers actually are falling and they never come out. Yeah, it's one of those places. Then there is so those are the internal bits of because that's the year of the war, whatever is happening within the year of the war. But how do you fix the year of the war? So for that, you got the position of the slow moving planets Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter. So those have to fix, have to go absolutely exactly. And then there are key nakshatras, and I mean, there are hundreds of things really. I mean, I can spend hours and hours on this, as I think most of you already know. I have already spent hours and hours on this, but so I'll take this further. So what are the nakshatras? There are 27 nakshatras in 360 degrees. 27 nakshatras, 360 degrees. 5 nakshatras are of importance. There is a Pushya nakshatra where Duryodhan rejects peace. By the way, that Pushya nakshatra, which I'll show you in a moment, I'll show you the snapshot of that. That Pushya nakshatra, which is in Cancer Rashi, but we don't talk about Rashis in the Mahabharata because they are not mentioned there. But Pushya nakshatra, that Pushya nakshatra where Duryodhan rejects peace is not the same Pushya nakshatra which is occurring when Balrama starts his pilgrimage. This is a key mistake which most Mahabharata researchers have made. It's important not to make that mistake. Then there is the Anuradha nakshatra where Balrama leaves Krishna. There's a Jyeshtha nakshatra where the Amavasya occurs. The next Pushya, 27 days later, Balrama starts pilgrimage. The Shravana nakshatra where Balrama must finish the pilgrimage. In between, there is a Mrigashira nakshatra and so on, where another eclipse will occur, etc. And of course, there's the famous Rohini nakshatra where Saturn is placed. So these are all important nakshatras, and I'm just going to show you where they are. And this is the sort of timeline I am trying to look at. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see Krishna starting, Revati nakshatra, Kartik Masa, Krishna reaching Hastinapura, Bharani nakshatra. In the middle, he halts at a place called Rikasthala. On that night when he reaches Hastinapur, basically there is mention of a lunar eclipse at Kartika, right? So that the problem is, as you already might be knowing, some of you, Kartika Purnima, so lunar eclipses can only occur around the Kartik Purnima, okay? Around the Purnima. So an eclipse can occur either on a Amavasya or a Purnima. So lunar eclipse is going to occur on a Purnima, solar eclipse on a Amavasya, on or around, just about, when it starts or end, whatever you want, but over there. The problem is that the verses which are describing a Kartik Purnima in the epic, there are two such verses. One of them describes an eclipse, a lunar eclipse at Kartika Purnima. And the other is describing something else, which is a lunar eclipse at Kartika Purnima when the Pandavas are sleeping at Upaplavya. So both of those are Vyasa narrating to Dhritarashtra before the war. And mind you, before the war. This is highly important. So that Kartik Purnima must occur before the war. It cannot occur during the war. Never mind after the war, but during the war, that Kartika Purnima can't occur. A lot of the Mahabharata researchers have fallen into this quicksand. They have taken that particular Kartik Purnima as occurring in the war timeline, which creates a very peculiar paradox, which I'll mention a bit later. The peace talks fail the first time the Pushya is reached. Can you see the star in Pushya 1? Then you will see 4 days later, Krishna has to ride with Karna at, that is a Uttara Falguni, Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni nakshatra. Karna will talk about 4 astronomy observations on Udyoga Parva 7 to 10. Then comes that point is also Udyoga Parva 140:18, where Saptamachavi Divasat Amavasya Bhavishyati. In 7 days, there's going to be an Amavasya. So you come to know what is the tithi of that particular day when this ride is occurring. So the middle blue circle which you are seeing, that is where that particular observation is mentioned. So that must be a Krishna Saptami or Ashtami, right? So from that you come to know that the Purnima which has occurred has to occur before, the first circle which you're seeing over there. Okay, the last circle on your right hand side, where you're seeing a partial solar eclipse over there, that is basically that Amavasya which is supposed to occur at Jyeshtha. So this is supposed to be the sequence, and please don't worry if you are not able to grasp it all at the moment, because this is just a, this is just a beginner's introduction. Okay. So this is just a very, very short overview of what it is. And then finally, right at the end, you've got of your screen, you'll see this particular, can you see this over here? This star, and that star is for the next Pushya which is occurring. And that is where Balrama's pilgrimage will start, You got the next Pushya where Balrama's pilgrimage starts, and then the Balrama's pilgrimage has to end. So that I will show a bit later anyway. And what are these nakshatras? You got a Pushya nakshatra over here. That, can you see this Cancer over here like this? And so this is a Rashi. Rashi is, we are not considering really, but that Pushya nakshatra is Altarf. Okay. So that is over there. Then you go around the zodiac. You will come to Jeshtha nakshatra over here, which is over here near Scorpio. Okay. Can you see this Scorpius? So this nakshatra over here is basically a big star, which is called as Jeshtha. Just before that will come Anuradha. You go down further around the zodiac and you will come to Shravana. And that Shravana nakshatra is where Balrama must finish his pilgrimage. This is very important. This sequence of Pushya to Shravana, and please note, as you can see, this going around the zodiac must occur. Therefore, Pushya to Shravana means Balrama will go once, come around, and then go over again. Right? So that is that Pushya to Shravana in 42 days. And this is a very difficult thing again, because it has to coincide with a host of other things. So what a lot of people do, because they cannot make this is almost an impossible criteria to make it fit in any year of your proposal, Mahabharata war proposal. It is impossible. It is occurring in 3067 BC. That's the only year in which it occurs properly. And mind you, in this, the 14th war, because you imagine this is the 18th war day. This Shravana Nakshatra is the 18th war day. So 4 days before this will occur a 14th war night moonrise. And that has to be seen. So that 14th war night moonrise cannot be Amavasya day. And that is another problem which is occurring in numerous Mahabharata proposals, right? So all these things have to coincide in 1 year of the war, which makes it an incredibly difficult task. Anyway, there is Rohini. Can you see Saturn over there? And can you see the two sort of, what you can call the forks of the limb of, what you can see over here in Taurus? And can you see that this is almost like a cart? This whole thing is shaped. And can you see that Saturn is in between the limbs over there, right? So that is Saturn at Rohini or Aldebaran. Okay. So I'll go over it again. Pushya Nakshatra, Cancer, where Balrama must start his pilgrimage. Jeshtha Nakshatra, where that Amavasya must occur. There must also be a partial or a full solar eclipse as you desire. Then must come Shravana Nakshatra, where Balrama must finish his pilgrimage, that is near Capricorn. Then you come to Rohini Nakshatra, where the Saturn must basically be placed somewhere there. And then you have a Pushya Nakshatra. Now, I'll come to a few bits and pieces a bit later in a moment. We're going to just continue this. Now, just to clear one thing, what is the Arundhati Vasishtha observation? Because a lot of people, end of the workshop, they suddenly ask me, "Oh, sir, but you didn't talk about Arundhati Vasishtha. Why are you ignoring Arundhati Vasishtha?" Like that, they always say. So in my last few talks, I've always started to talk about Arundhati Vasishtha, and there is a verse basically which is in chapter 2 of Bhishma Parva, and it is verse 31. It says, "Ya chaisha Vishruta rajas trailokya sadhu sammata Arundhati tayapesha Vasishtha prishtata krita." Arundhati, the word is coming from the root Rundhe. Rundhe means obstruct.
हाँ जी, वो तो मम्मा के लिए मिला था.
Arundhati literally means one who never obstructs.
Everybody else mute their mics, please.
So Arundhati means somebody who never obstructs. So the idea is she's taken as always walking behind, and all the women who are listening to this, and this will get eventually out on YouTube and all that. Please don't beat me up for this. For saying that walking behind, basically the husband. So Arundhati, as you can see, for some reason it is echoing, is it? No. So Arundhati is basically...
So some participant has kept their mic on. So Jagdish, Sumani ji, can you just mute your mic, please?
Right. So Right, Arundhati. So Arundhati literally means one who doesn't obstruct. So she is always taken as walking behind, right? Here, what it is saying is that she is walking ahead of Vashishta. But a few verses before this is occurring another verse, which is basically saying that it is Bata Nimitta, right? So that is one problem. The other problem is that this verse is when Vyasa meets Dhritarashtra, it is occurring before the war. Out of all the war proposals I have ever seen, I have never seen a war proposal except for 3067 BCE, which is able to show that Arundhati is walking ahead of Vashishta, actually walking ahead of the Vashishta, not that it is some dreamt of thing or whatever it is, and only occurring in 1 or 2 months, and it is occurring before the war, and not during the war and not after the war, which fits in perfectly with that definition. Most of the people, what they are doing is they are taking a date way beyond in the 5K range. And they say, well, Arundhati is walking ahead of Vashishta at that point. It may not be, yes, go on, Ajay. Ajay, you wanted to ask a question? Ajay?
Yeah, so as far as I understand that Arundhati Vasishtha is a binary star system.
Exactly.
Right? Yes. I am asking a question.
No, so binary.
Sort of a small lag between. Yes, there's a small lag between my video and.
No, forget about the video. In fact, if you want, you can take off the video and you can just put audio on. That might be easier for you for
Right.
the bandwidth.
So my question is now, if it's a binary star system, then what do you mean by Prishtatah and Puratah? Because that.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So my question is, if
so I think he has lost his connection.
Oh, okay. But let me complete what he's saying. What he's saying is basically that this is a very correct question, and it is a question which is worth asking. And the question is basically that if Arundhati and Vashishta are basically a binary star system, what he means is it's actually not just binary, it's a circumpolar star. So they're going around in concentric circles. So what is this business of Arundhati and Vashishta forward or backward or whatever it is? That is what he's asking. And it's a very correct question. What that is taken by certain researchers like Vartak and Oak have taken it to mean that it is with the reference to the northern celestial pole, which is fine. That's okay. And I am also saying that we can show in our year for the Mahabharata that Arundhati is momentarily ahead of Vashishta with reference to the northern celestial pole, and it happens in August 3067 BC. It happens. You can show it, and I can show it.
Okay.
And I'm going to show it in a moment. So, but that's what I'm saying. So, and that particular criticism is absolutely valid, by the way, that it's a binary star. So what does this even mean? But the point is that, so he's back, Ajay. So I was saying binary, it's not just binary, it's circumpolar. The star is circumpolar. And for those people who don't understand circumpolar, it means that they're going one around the other.
Yeah,
and because they're going one around the other, the question of one going ahead of the other is, very difficult to answer. Why exactly are we saying that it is going one ahead of the other? Right? So, what we are basically saying over here is that it's with reference. So the people who have talked about this observation in depth are talking about it in concern to in reference to the northern celestial pole, or the NCP. Okay. And if you take even with reference to northern celestial pole, that's what we are saying, that in our year for the Mahabharata, we can show that when Arundhati walked momentarily ahead of Vashishta, in a year, it is happening every year. Let me say it again. Every year in August, between 1000 and 3000 300 or 3400 BCE every year. Okay. So that means that there is no epoch of Arundhati Vashishta. Because if it is occurring every year, every year in August, there's no question of an epoch. Epoch is when you say it's only occurring in that time interval and nowhere outside. Here it is occurring every year in August. So the question doesn't arise. And that means, and by the way, the verses are occurring before the war. So ideally, you want this observation to only occur before the war. So if it is occurring only before the war, it is occurring only before the war in August 3067 BC. That's perfect. Not during and not after. Now, the question arises, what about during and after? Is there any evidence in the Mahabharata text where Arundhati is called a Pativrata or somebody who is not walking ahead of Vashishta before and after the war? So this is an important one, right? So first is it a nimitta or not? We already said that there is a verse before that. You can go into my videos and all that and see that verse and all that, where it is saying clearly it is a nimitta only. But for a moment, when did it occur? Before the war, during the war, or after the war? So, when did Vyasa meet Dhritarashtra? He describes the verse of Bhishma before the war. So the question, it has to occur before the war in that case. If you're being stringent about it, it's occurring before the war. And then let's go further. What happens to the Arundhati Vashishta observation before the war? Much before. So we are talking about before the war, in the year of the war. And we are talking about Arundhati Vashishta much before the war ever occurred. And what happens to it after the war? So my first point is, Bhishma, a few days later on the bed of arrows, says that he remembers Arundhati, compares Sandali to that same elevated region as a Pativrata. Arundhatitva narinam swargaloke mahiyate. And if you go much earlier, when the arrow was released by Arjun into the eye of that fish, and he has won that contest. So Kunti blesses Draupadi to be a Pativrata, much like Arundhati later in the text and earlier in the text. So the point is, much before the war, Arundhati Vashishta is not occurring. And after the war, Bhishma himself is saying no. And during the war also, there's no mention. It's only before the war. So which is the war theory which is able to prove that it is only occurring before the war? That is 3067 BC. Do you see now where the problem arises? That's one. The other problem is, how can you say something is a nimitta if it is occurring for thousands of years? That's number two.
Could you tell us what nimitta means in this
Nimitta
context?
is omen.
Okay.
So a cat does not normally cross your road. A black cat doesn't cross your path every day. Let's hope anyway. In my house, it happens every day, so that's fine. But outside my house, it doesn't happen, let us say. But then a black cat crosses your path one fine day. So that becomes a nimitta. But normality is that a black cat is not crossing your path. Or let us say that Ajay and Shivansh are going on motorcycles. Ajay goes out first, Shivansh goes out second, right? And that occurs for years altogether. And one fine day, Shivansh goes in front. And people say, oh, Shivansh went in front. You see what I'm saying? Or maybe you're racing and one goes ahead of the other, but that happens only once. So that is a nimitta. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yes.
It's an happening which is out of the ordinary. It is not something which is occurring for beyond your lifespan. So if it's occurring for thousands of years, it cannot be said to be a nimitta, right? That's one problem. And the other problem is that it cannot be said to be, epoch, because it is occurring in August every year. Right. And then there is, of course, the other issue that in the verses which are occurring just before the Arundhati Vashishta observation, you can see that these are, the idols or the murtis are of the devatas are trembling, smiling, vomiting blood with their mouths. They sweat and they fall down. Is this occurring every day? Is this occurring every month? Is this occurring every year? Is this occurring for thousands of years? No. It is occurring. It's a very occasional, rare occurrence which somebody has noted, right? By the way, this business of trembling, or so this sweating of a deity, people might say, what are we even talking about over here? Just to very quickly relate one particular instance from Dakshineshwar, that when the deity of Kali Ma was being kept inside the casket, when it was, it was kept there, and the consecration was still, it was in the blue, it was sort of in the air. That consecration is going to happen, not going to happen. And Rani Rashomani had a dream. And in the dream, Kalima came to her and said that you need to, I'm feeling very warm over here and I'm perspiring, right? You see this sweat. So I'm sweating. And she was like, what is happening, right? And she went and opened that particular casket, and there were beads of whatever it was. Maybe it was condensation or whatever it was, but it was there on the murti. So it is a sort of one of those sort of occurrences. Do you see what I'm saying? That it is something which is a rare occurrence, right? It's not occurring every day, right? And there are other occurrences over here as well, which we are seeing. Then finally, you've got right at the bottom over here, Ubhe Sandhe Praka. So you can see at dawn and sunrise, swarms of locusts by the hundreds are seen. And Arunodayeshu Drishyante Shatashah Shalabha Vrajaha, right? That is that particular verse over there. Can you see? So at dawn and sunrise, swarms of locusts by the hundreds. I mean, this may occur for a little bit of time or slightly more time, but it's not going to occur for hundreds and thousands of years. It's going to occur for maybe a year, maybe a bit less, maybe a few months, maybe even lesser than that, right? And this is a very interesting observation. And if you go and read my book on 3067 BC, you will find that both the dawn and dusk were glowing, accompanied by burning of the four directions. There was a rain of blood and a rain of bones, O Bharata. If you see this particular verse, then you will see this thing has actually occurred after the Tunguska meteor has fallen on Earth. 1800, whatever it was, the Tunguska meteor, after it fell, then after that, in the evening, the photographers were able to take photographs in the dark because the directions were glowing. This is pointing to a meteor strike. And of course, if you look at this rain of blood and a rain of bones, I mean, this is not occurring every day. I mean, it's a very rare occurrence, right? I don't know. Have you ever heard of a rain of blood and a rain of bones ever in your life? No. So these are very rare occurrences, and it is in the, so that is verse number 30. And I've shown you some verses before that. It's at the end of those verses that the Arundhati Vashishta observation appears. And it is one amongst numerous nimittas which has been given. And the word nimitta is mentioned very specifically in verse 16. So how long did these things go on for? Days, months, years, centuries? Well, it's days, maybe a month, maybe a few months, right? But not a very long time, right? That is highly important to understand. And it is occurring before the war, by the way. These sort of things are being described before the war. And then you got two verses after as well. And again, those are again only occurring for a minor amount of time. So one of them is the Rohini transit of Saturn. But that is again, so days, months, that we are talking about those sort of things. So the final inescapable conclusion is that AV observation or Arundhati Vashishta observation is only a nimitta. And we can show it only occurs before the war and not after or during it, right? There are other meanings of this verse, which I think it's outside the scope of this particular thing, but it could mean that temporary abandonment. Arundhati temporarily abandoned Vashishta can occur because they are bipolar stars, and Arundhati is notoriously Alcor. Arundhati is notoriously difficult to visualize in the sky. So it can be obscured by lots of very, very insignificant things, what we consider insignificant. And what can they be insignificant? What can they be obscured by? So here you've got a verse, for example, which is there again. Graho tamrana shikhau prajwalta vubhau Saptarishi Udaranam Samavachadya Vaibhavam. The Saptarishis, of which Arundhati is a part of that particular thing, Arundhati Vashishta. Saptarishi Udaranam Samavachadya Vaibhavam. So the Saptarishis have been either obscured, is one meaning of that particular verse, or penetrated. And what can they be penetrated by? Grahau Tamra Arunau Shikhau. two grahas which are coppery red and have got shikhas, have got tails. So which graha has got tail, right? And which graha is Prajwalita? Prajwalita, you see, which is sort of glowing, ignited. So those have to be comets. So from that point of view, they have to be comets. And this verse is occurring before another verse over there, which is talking about these two things being near Vishakha. So the question naturally arises, people say, Dr. Pandit, you're talking about this, but can you show two comets near Vishakha for Year of the War? Yes, I can. There is a separate chapter on it in my book. Those two comets, you can see comet Blancpain and comet Soho. And I've given the paths of the comets also. Okay. And I've given a method of visualization of those comets also. And you can almost be certain that the tail of those comets, it's possible that it might have obscured or penetrated the Saptarishis. So Arundhati can be obscured by comets. Yes, definitely. Why not? It can be obscured by a tail of a comet. When you're looking at it in the sky, that's what happens, right? I mean, Brihat Samhita of Vahra Meera describes exactly such a woman so well. And I've given the chapter and verse reference. But here it is in June to August. I mean, I'm being generous over here when I say only August. I mean, June to August, you can probably sort of say, but I am only saying August at the moment. But you can see in June 3000, July 3100, and August 3000, you can see very clearly Alcor and Mizar. Alcor ahead of Mizar. And over here also Alcor ahead of Mizar, right? So does this now, I mean, this is what I'm showing you is, and this is in reference to the northern celestial pole, right? So the question doesn't arise, right? Of any epoch or whatever it is basically occurring every year, and it is occurring in August. It is occurring before the war, not during and after the war. It is only a nimitta, end of story, right? So now I'm going to come to a method of calculation for your moonrise. So before that, the short theory of modified proposal for 3067 BC. This is, please note that my proposal for 3067 BC as the year of the war is not the same as Srinivas Raghavan's, who I consider to be one of the most amazing astronomer mathematicians ever who has come, on the land of Bharata. So the reason why I'm saying that sort of thing is because he was doing all his calculations by hand, but he was a genius mathematician. He was able to do it. But there are a few mistakes which he has done. And I'll come to those a bit later. I mean, they're small mistakes, but they have some importance. One of those mistakes was basically where he has, for example, miscalculated position of Jupiter. He could not calculate, this Balrama's pilgrimage, basically because he kept sticking to the start date of the war as Ekadashi. So these are all minor things, but his date of the war, to calculate that is a humongously difficult thing. And Dr. Achar, who, I consider to be like one of my mentors in this field. And these are greats, because to come up with this sort of thing, a year of the war in which all those observations are fitting like that, that is very difficult. If you look at all the other proposals, they are all either transposing the nakshatras. So a bit like if Ajay and me want to compete in a 100 meters race, I'm a bit older anyway. So I want to beat Ajay. So I decide that I'm going to transpose the start and the finish lines. So I will start from the finish line, and Ajay will start from the start line. So therefore, I'll always win the war. I will always win the race, right? So it's a bit like that. A lot of the astronomers have transposed the nakshatras around. And that's all nonsense. I mean, that you shouldn't do all those things. It's Pushya. It starts with Pushya. It finishes with a Shravana, and the verse references given, which I'll show. And this is just a brief overview. This is a very busy slide, and I don't want you to get confused by it at the moment. And I will dissect it apart. I'll give you the parts of it and how that fits, each of these things. And what you have got over here is the second Pushya, where it starts, which is Balrama's pilgrimage on the x-axis, ending on the 18th day of the war. That day must be a Shravana Nakshatra. Then you've got a y-axis, which is the 18th day of the days of the war. In that, you've got a 14th war night moonrise. that must be a waning phase crescent. And why is it a waning phase crescent, and how you can calculate it, how you can prove that it can be nothing else, because that is all important. These are all scientific bits and pieces, right? You cannot just make an assertion. I can assert anything tomorrow. I can assert hundreds of things, but are they true or not? And why am I saying that that is true, right? That is very important. And why is that last day of the war either an Amavasya or very near it? If anybody has any questions at this stage, but I will go through the moonrise and then you can ask me the questions, because the moonrise is very important. Because a lot of the war theories are completely finished by this single observation, which they have taken to be a conflicting observation, which the problem is that there are 60 plus observations, 60 plus verses of Drona Parva, chapter 159, 161, which are saying exactly how that moonrise has occurred, right? And if that moonrise has occurred the way it has, 60 observations are in conflict with that, with all the other people who have taken this thing to be a conflicting observation. So if you ever see any other books or whatever it is who say, well, 14th night, we consider conflicting observation, that means 60 verses plus are out. And what else occurs, that also I'll show. So let's join the action at verse 42 of chapter 159 of Drona Parva. It's a wonderful verse, and I want you all to repeat it with me, which I'll just repeat. A little while after Karna has killed Ghatotkach with his Divyastra, which is reserved for Arjun, there's a verse which comes which says, Tatah Kumudanathena Kamini Ganda Panduna Netranandena Chandrena Mahendra Digalankrita. So I'm going to slow it down. So you repeat after me so that you come to know this verse. And you can tell your, because a lot of the children and all that, they also ask you, what are you even talking about? This is a singular observation which can be proved to actually occur. You can prove it with the software it occurred exactly like that. You can prove it with multiple softwares. They all agree on this point. Tataha Kumudanathena. Kumudanathena, Manmatha's bow, Kamini Ganda Panduna. Kamini Ganda Panduna. Kamini, beautiful woman. Ganda Panduna, lips of a, so smiling lips of a beautiful woman. Netranandena, that which gives beauty to, pleasure to the eyes. Chandrena, Chandra. Mahendri, eastern direction. Dig, direction. Alankrita, adorned, right? So I'll repeat it again. Tataha Kumudanathena Kamini Ganda Panduna. Let us not mistranslate this verse, which some people have done. Kamini Ganda Panduna is lips, not face of a smiling woman. Lips is a crescent. Face is a full moon. Highly important to understand. Kamini Tataha Kumudanathena Kamini Ganda Panduna. Netranandena Chandrena Mahindri Digalankrita. Okay. So what is this verse saying? So Mahindri Digalankrita is showing you the path. Mahindri is the direction of Indra, which is east. Digalankrita is the direction in which moonrise has occurred. Kamini Ganda Panduna, like the lips of a beautiful smiling woman, is a crescent moon. It's an unequivocal crescent moon, right? Why is it a crescent moon also? We can go a bit further in a moment. Okay, why? But I'll tell you why. The verse says that a crescent moon, moonrise, has adorned the direction of the east. Remember that now, carefully. East on the 14th night. It's not saying Varuni Digalankrita, right? It's not saying that the moon has appeared in the western sky. It is saying the moon has adorned the eastern horizon, right? Because the moonrise always occurs in the east, just like the sun is rising in the east. So you cannot change the rules and directions of astronomy to suit a theory, right? This is highly important. Okay, now why is this thing a waning phase moon, right? So there are three things which are given in this verse itself. I'm going to go for lots of other verses, but if you go to my videos and all that, you will find hordes of other information. It's beyond the scope of this particular talk, but this is a late night. Why late night? I'll tell you in a moment. But it is already said in the text that it is occurring quite late in the night after they have rested for a time after the word of Ghatotkach. which has already occurred in the night, right? Highly important. So it is occurring late in the night in the eastern sky. We already said Mahendri Digalankarata, which points to a rising moonrise, right? I mean, it's a moonrise on the horizon, and a crescent moon, Kamini Ganda Panduna, right? These three factors are there. Therefore, it can only be a waning phase moon. Why? Why? Why can this 14th night moonrise, which we are talking about, crescent moon, eastern part of the sky, only be a waning phase of the moon? So here is now this I do in my live workshops. What I do is I get people to repeat after me, but here we can't do that. But what we have got is that the moon rises progressively later by 48 minutes, which is one muhurta roughly every day from Amavasya to Purnima, right? How many minutes later? 48 minutes later. How many minutes later? 48 minutes later. At Amavasya, assuming a sunrise at 6 a.m., the moonrise will be at that time. So in the 10th day of the war, 10 times 48 is how much? 10 times 48?
480.
Correct. 480 minutes. And 480 minutes divided by 60 is how much? 8 hours.
8 hours.
Correct. So if the sunrise is at 6 a.m., then the moonrise, assuming that 10th day is a Shukla Dashami for a moment, what will be the 10th day moonrise be at? It will be at 2 p.m., correct? 6 a.m. plus 8 hours is 2 p.m. Okay. Are we happy with that? Are we happy, everybody? Yeah. So Amavasya, assuming a sunrise at 6 a.m., moonrise will be at that time, 10th day of the war. If it was 10th day of the war, if the war starts on Amavasya, then the moonrise is basically at 2 p.m. It's in the daytime. It's in the daytime. It is not in the night, number one. So here we are with that particular calculation. 480 minutes, 8 hours later, therefore at 2 p.m., if the war starts on Amavasya. Note, we are not saying war is starting on Amavasya, but this is the reverse way of proving it. And if we are talking about this, then on the 14th night of the war, assuming sunrise at 6 a.m., and if we are saying that the war starts on Amavasya, then on the 14th day of the war, if the war starts on Amavasya, moonrise is when? 48 times 6, right? 48 times 14. So how much is that? 672, which is how much? It is 11 hours and 12 minutes later. Are we happy with that, Ajay, Shivansh, and all the others so far?
Yes, sir.
Sir, could you give us a little bit of background with this verse? Because what is it exactly telling us?
One second. I'll come to that. I'll come to that. So that verse is telling you something else. That verse is telling you that there's a moon which is rising in the eastern sky late at night, and that moon which rises late at night in the eastern sky is always a waning phase moon. It is a late waning phase moon because it's a crescent moon, right? Okay. And now I'm trying to get you to calculate moonrise. Okay, right? So these are two separate things which I'm showing you. That was what the facts were. Right. That was what the facts were. This, I am teaching you how to calculate moonrise, right? How to calculate moonrise. So we are assuming at the moment, so I am giving you a moonrise calculation for Shukla Chaturdashi at the moment. Shukla Chaturdashi, okay? So for Shukla Paksha, waxing phase, 14th war night. We can do this again in a moment. Okay, so people
Praveen has a point that he mentioned. He says that if this is the case, then that would mean the moonrise will be around 6 p.m. on 14th day, which cannot happen since it is not a Purnami.
So that now you're starting to get the point.
Right.
You're starting to get the point. Exactly. Now, the reason I'm giving this deliberately in this format is for you to actually come up with this sort of perfectly. This is absolutely correct. That means that when we say this, we are automatically able to now recognize that the 14th night moonrise has to be a waning phase, cannot be waxing phase. Because whatever we are showing you over here, and there is my calculation, for the 14th war day. If the war starts on Amavasya, the 14th war day is 40, moonrise is 14 times 48, which is 672 minutes, which is 11 hours and 12 minutes later. 672 divided by 60 is 11 hours 12 minutes later. So from 6 a.m. you're going till 5:12 basically in the evening. Okay, I mean you can take it 5:30 if you like, fine, but what I'm saying is it is still in the day, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it
So
is
this is
rising in the
standard
east.
proving by contradiction. If I'm not
I'm
wrong.
proving it by contradiction number one. Now the question arises, and in IIT Kanpur, somebody had asked me this question. Somebody asked me this earlier as well, and it's a brilliant question. And it is the bogeyman which has been raised by one or two astronomers who have said, no, Pandit, you're wrong. Why you're wrong? Because they're saying what has happened is that the moonrise of 5:12 or 5:30, whatever it was, has been obscured by a dust storm or a storm of arrows or clouds or by Maya Jal or whatever it was, right? And that is why the moon is now rising later at night. And they quote another verse which is mentioning the word punaha, saying, so this punaha means is rising later at night. Now this is a question which is a very interesting one, which only exposes. It's one of those questions, if somebody ever raises this question, you're digging yourself into a grave, because it's one of those things you keep digging and you're going down into a grave. And why is that? What is the interesting thing? If you ever watch a moonrise, you'll come to know what the problem is with this. And I'll tell you what the problem is. Very interesting it is. Beautiful thing, which I never realized for nearly 6 months, a year. And there was one Hare Krishna devotee from Ireland, and she said, I actually sat awake for nights and nights and watched this 30 nights in a row. And and have you ever done that, doctor? And just to bolster your side, have you ever done this? I said, oh, what's the issue? So I said, well, let me try and do it. And it's a most magnificent, amazing thing you'll ever encounter in your life. What it is, I'll tell you. If you go on a Krishna Dashami, for example, on forget about Krishna Dashami. Okay, on a Shukla Chaturdashi, if you go and you watch the moonrise at 5:12, 5:30, whatever it was, right, in the eastern sky, you wait there, you sit there, you put on a nice jacket, make sure you're well covered, it might rain and all that, and you watch that moon. And the moon will be obscured by clouds occasionally and all that. And what happens to that moon is it doesn't stay in the eastern part of the sky. It is not some sthamban which the great goddess has done on the moon, that the moon is being kept in one part of the sky and everything else, everything else is moving. All waiting for you to see again in the eastern part of the sky that moon will again rise. No. You see, the problem is 6 or 8 hours later, when you actually watch it, the moon is gone over your head to the western part of the sky. It's no longer in the eastern part of the sky. So there's no way that the moon will ever be seen in the eastern part of the sky again and be described as a, Mahindra Digalankrata, that too as a crescent moon. It's impossible, right? You see what the problem is.
Okay. Yes,
so the problem is that this waning phase moon, this 14th night moonrise, is unequivocal by all methods, by all directions, by every scientific thought, a logical thought possible. It is nothing but a waning phase. And that is the whole problem. That is the whole problem. Because what happens with that is it's a crescent moon as well. Not only that, there are other verses, and let me describe those verses from chapter 161. त्रिभागमात्र शेषायाम रात्र्याम युद्धम अवर्तत कुरुणाम पांडवानाम च संरक्षितानाम विशांपते. Right? त्रिभागमात्र शेषायाम रात्र्याम युद्धम अवर्तत कुरुणाम पांडवानाम च संरक्षितानाम विशांपते. Now what is this verse? It is saying the moonrise is late at night when only 3 out of 15 parts of the night were remaining. Right? There are other verses which I have got over here. I mean, they're all describing exactly the same thing. And what is the problem with this? It means that this is around 2 o'clock, 2:20, whatever it is in the night, depending on when sunrise was, depending on when sunset is, depending on when, sunrise again occurs. Depends on what calculation of night you take, right? But the point is very late at night. So a moonrise occurring so late at night, it's waning phase moon by all. So this is another way of for you to tell that it has got to be a waning phase moon. Okay, so this is one. So the other corollary to this particular thing is that the last day of the war, therefore, must be Amavasya or very close to it. That is really important. Because now what is happening is, when you know the last day is Amavasya, the first day can never be Amavasya. Number one, we already proved first day cannot be Amavasya. But we are also proving that the first day has to be very close to a full moon, actually. It is like 13, S13, Shukla Paksha 13 or Shukla Paksha 14, like that. It can never be Amavasya. It is also, by the way, very difficult for it to be a Shukla Ekadashi, which is what the traditionalists say, that the first day of the war is a Shukla Ekadashi. That is not possible, in my opinion. Matlab, I have shown all this so far, scientific facts only I'm showing. So these are all the problems when you say, so Shukla Ekadashi, now what is, therefore, how can the Gita be associated with Shukla Ekadashi? I'll tell you why. Because there are some traditions which say that the Gita delivery might have been done earlier, one day earlier to the war. You see? So, or it can be, if you look at the ISKCON people, for example, they are taking the Dwadashi to be the delivery, So these are all things which are interesting, one can think about those things. But all I'm saying over here, war cannot start on Amavasya, number one. War has to end on Amavasya, number two. There are verses which are describing that the war is ending on Amavasya. Okay. And number three, what I'm trying to say over here is war must start close to a full moon, right? And these are all incredibly important things for Hindus, for Mahabharata astronomers, for all people, whoever is interested in these sort of things. It can never be anything else. It's just pure mathematics and astronomy. It's not some mumbo jumbo. And we have already said that this can only be waning phase of the moon. But we have also said, suppose somebody uses verse 25 from chapter 159 and says the word punaha. If you look at this verse, tato vinidra vishrantas chandrama sudite punaha sansadadish yathanyayam swargaya kurupandavaha. So this is a verse which is being used at a time when the Kauravas and Pandavas are resting, because they've been fighting and fighting and fighting, and so late in the night that they're so tired that they cannot even recognize who is a friend or a foe. So Arjun says, stop this. This is supposed to be a dharma yuddha. We are not supposed to fight like this if nobody knows who is the friend or enemy, right? It's highly important. So this punaha is actually referring to a moonrise. So is actually referring to the fight starting again. But some people say, why cannot it refer to that moonrise? And I have answered that question just earlier, because that moon will not remain in the eastern part of the sky anymore. The moon has to go to the western part of the sky. 8 hours later, the moon will be in the western part of the sky. And that is the whole problem with the thesis of most other people who have taken that this particular day, is a full moon or whatever it is. It's a mistranslation and compounded by multiple errors in understanding and theory, right? This can only be a Krishna Dashami Ekadashi moon, right? This particular 14th night of the war. So this is important. And then therefore the last day of the war, which is again multiple references to it, has to be Amavasya. Then there are other verses which are again pointing to our theory being correct. Tato muhurtat bhagavan purastas cha lakshanaha arunam darshayamasa grasajyoti prabham prabhu. So the moon has appeared after a muhurta and its early rays eclipse the darkness. So any doubts about an earlier moonrise are dispelled, right? So it's very, very clear. There's no, it's not some, it's pretty straightforward, right? And this is where I have described that, the moon would have moved over the head to the western part of the sky if you wait those many hours, basically. If you are theorizing war starting on Amavasya. So we are theorizing that the 14th night of the war is a waning crescent moon, Krishna Dashami Ekadashi, like that. And the last day of the war has to be an Amavasya. Now, in how many verses is this described as a Chandrodaya? This eastern sky moonrise, how many verses? So there are at least 4 verses where it is described as Chandrodaya. So again, the question of it being anything else does not arise, right? Please note that these 60, if this thing happens, so I'm just coming to that. So the 18th day of the war is either Amavasya, the first day of the war is close to a full moon. War can never begin on Amavasya. It can never begin on Amavasya, okay? Right. Now, what happens if we ignore this 14th night moonrise, which is what a lot of people like to do? It happens in life. People like to ignore a lot of things and say conflicting observation. What happens? The entire moon phase for the whole year goes wrong. If I tell you, for example, what was the tithi for today? It is what? Saptami going on Ashtami, right? Of a Shukla Paksha. If I tell you, no, it is Krishna Paksha, well, if I tell you it is a full moon today, right? If I tell you it is full moon today, and if I base all my calculations on that, what happens to my calculation for the full year? It's completely wrong, right? Correct, right? What happens if I do this is the nakshatras also go wrong. That's the whole problem. Tithi and nakshatra are inextricably linked to each other. And that is what happens to a lot of Mahabharata astronomers as well. And that is where we have to be so careful in seeing that all these rigorous criteria are followed. So the start of the war will become wrong. The end of the war will become wrong. The start date and the end date. Balrama's pilgrimage will go wrong because that is linked to that war timeline. Because Balrama must return on the last day of the war. So because the moon phase of the war has gone wrong, the start of the war is wrong, end of the war will become wrong, Balrama's pilgrimage will be wrong, and Bhishma Moksha will be wrong because the Bhishma Moksha depends on Bhishma falling in that war timeline. Yes? And that is the problem with calling something a conflicting observation. You cannot call the 14th night moonrise as anything other than a crescent moon, waning phase, late waning phase moonrise, implying that the last day of the war has to be Amavasya. You call it anything else and everything else will go wrong. Everything, every single thing will go wrong. Yes? Are we happy with this so far, Ajay, Shivansh and others?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
I think I've explained it reasonably well. I mean,
reasonably well. Yes, you have.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I am showing you just that X and Y axis now. So this X axis, 42 days, start of the war over here, end of the war on or near an Amavasya, 42 days. This is my one axis which is there, which is my X axis, and the Y axis begins near a full moon, cannot begin on Amavasya, ends on or near Amavasya. This must be a Pushya, that must be a Shravana. Okay. Now, why am I saying that? Why am I saying Pushya to Shravana? Now we'll come to that in a moment. We have got now the Tithi for the 18th war day, which is Amavasya. I mean, I have not shown you some other verses which are saying explicitly Amavasya, but we are theorizing it as Amavasya, but there are verses which are pointing to it being Amavasya. Can we now fix a nakshatra for the 18th war day? Can we fix a nakshatra for the 18th war day? Right?
Yes, sir.
So this is very important. And what is that particular nakshatra for the 18th war day? It is from a very peculiar verse. Chatvarimshad dahanidya dvechame nistritasya vai pushyena samprayatosmi shravane punaragataha. Right? And shishya yorve gadayuddham drushtu kamosmi madhava. This is what Balarama is basically saying over here. He's saying, I am desirous of seeing the Gada Yuddha between my two star pupils. And the second verse over here is saying, Pushyena Samprayatosmi Shravane Punaragata. Starting from a Pushya, it must end on a Shravana Nakshatra, right? So the nakshatra for the 18th war day is from this peculiar verse, right? And this is a very, very important thing which I am mentioning over here.
Yes.
So Balrama's pilgrimage starting on a Pushya Nakshatra, ending on a Shravana Nakshatra, 42 days. 42nd day is also the 18th war day, and this is when Balrama returns. Therefore, 18th war day must be Shravana Nakshatra and Amavasya. Okay. Now that is very, very stringent criteria. Now you have now come to, so basically I'm going about it mathematically, effectively, right? Ajay and Shivansh and all the others who are from science stream must be recognizing my, the way I'm going basically on this, right?
This is incredibly important because it's only after that Balarama returns we understand कि कौन से नक्षत्र पे वो खत्म हो रहा है war.
Right. Because it says very clearly, you see the verse over here, this is such a clear verse, Pushyena Samprayatosmi Shravane Punaragata. Now you'll find a lot of people who say either one or two things. They say anybody can confirm Pushya to Shravana, but we can't. And then they say nobody can confirm Pushya to Shravana, and so on and so forth. They go between the two directions. It's very difficult. This is so singularly difficult that people have done all sorts of things with it. They have tried to take Shravana starting, Pushya finishing, which is not what the verse says. I mean, it's a bit like me, like Shivansh and Ajay racing, and then Shivansh says, no, I'll start from one side and go to the other side, and that way I'll finish there. Or Ajay saying that, for example, it could be, So this is not happening, right? You got to have the same criteria for everybody in this particular context. And there is a film I have made on this on Twitter, which is over here. And if people follow my account, they can see that particular film also. And 2 or 3 films I made on Balrama's pilgrimage and war timeline versus these other timelines.
So what, sir, let me ask again, what are the scope for misunderstanding that was? Because it seems pretty clear to me that, if you could go back to that slide.
Right.
Yes. So, Pushyena Samprayatosmi Shravane Punaragatah. It is absolutely clear.
Very clear.
That Balarama is returning on a Shravana.
There is no astronomer.
How are other scholars?
No, there is no astronomer who is actually saying that this verse does not mean what it means.
How are the other scholars misinterpreting this? I mean, there is no way to misinterpret this.
No, they are not misinterpreting also. What they are saying, so there are 2 things which are happening. So see, these are all very stringent criteria. The 14th war night moonrise, the Balrama's pilgrimage, the Bhishma Moksha in Magha Masa are very stringent criteria. And what happens is, if you, in science, we have this, and those people who are scientists who are over here will understand what I'm saying. If you take out some of these stringent observations, then you're free to have a nice canvas on which you can do anything you want. Right? Does it make sense what I'm trying to say over here? So,
yes, sir.
If I say, well, forget about that 14th war night moonrise, yaar, Pandit, kya apna fight band karo yaar, किधर अपना झगड़ा वगड़ा करते बैठते हो, 14th night war moonrise, ऐसा हुआ, वैसा हुआ, whatever it is, don't do all that, sir. Just accept it that it could be anywhere. Who cares? कहाँ हुआ? Hindu, see, it doesn't matter to us, na? Matlab, why should it matter to us? Why should it matter where it occurred, how it occurred, and all? हुआ कहीं तो हुआ. Like that, So, Ajay ji, I think you are getting my point over here. I hope what I'm trying to say.
Sir, the more funny thing is that if they.
So I'll look at it.
Yeah, go on.
Sir, the more funny thing is that if the others cannot prove it, for example, in 5561, then they say that this condition cannot at all be proved in any theory.
But I'm showing it. I'm going to show it right now. And this is the problem. I keep showing it live, and people say, no, you can't prove it. You can't prove it because we can't prove it. But I mean, वैसा तो है नहीं. But yes, this is true. One thing is true that in the original theory of what's his name of the great astronomer Srinivas Raghavan, who initially proposed this, yes, there he could not prove it. But those were minor errors, because, and I'll tell you why it was minor. Because I mean, what is a minor error is if you show that Balrama is returning 1 or 2 days after, that is to me a minor error as compared to showing Balrama going the wrong way around from Shravana to Pushya. I mean, that is completely absurd. And not even Shravana to Pushya, actually, if you look at it carefully, which I can show you on that software is very useful, Jehora. On that you can prove it is actually Uttarashada to Ashlesha. So that makes it even more difficult. So there the nakshatras are itself not there. Baat hi khatam ho gayi. Anyway, no, I mean, yeah, I'm just, I mean, look, this is how can we put it? It's an abstract battle. It's a battle on abstracts, right? Because these are verses, they are in Sanskrit. Half the world doesn't understand Sanskrit. So,
that is the problem, yes.
I mean, no, even I mean, I've had an uphill battle with this thing. And to be honest, I would have never, ever bothered about doing any of these things. Why should I even bother about doing any of these things? Because Acharya has already done it, so why I should bother? I mean, and I'm very grateful to all the people who have challenged me and all that, because I'm one of those people. I really am. I'm very laid back. I've got a good thing going. So I've pretty much,
Right.
according to me, I'm happy. I've achieved whatever I wanted to do in life, and I've reached 50 years of age. So therefore, it's very difficult for me to again go back and start fighting and all that. वो मुश्किल हो जाता है for a person like me. In Marathi, I mean, we have that saying, I'm शांत झालोय मी एकदम. There's no point in fighting, and so I mean, if you feel I'm wrong, very good. If you feel I'm right, very good. Like that, whatever you say, very good. But I mean, you get challenged, and then well, fine. Then you have to prove yourself, fine. So then I had to come and prove all this. But it's an uphill battle and struggle for somebody like me to learn all that in 6 months, and that's where I'm very grateful that I got that knowledge. Otherwise, I would have never ever dreamt of this, and for that I'm infinitely grateful that I got this knowledge, to Divine Mother and all that. I was going. You have seen, most of you have seen. I used to just go offline, na? Aram se just go offline, and then 2-3 months later I'll resurface, and by that point Twitter will have cut half my followers. Shadow banned me and all whatnot. Because they don't want me there anyway. So it was suiting their this thing. And even now it happens that whenever I start talking on political discourses anyway, they shadow ban me outright. So वो तो सब ठीक है, and I couldn't be bothered anyway with any of that. But I'm very grateful that somebody challenged me, and Nilesh Oak, actually, I'm very grateful to him that he challenged me. Otherwise, I would have never ever dreamt of doing all these things. I'm very laid back. At this stage of my life, I'm very, very laid back in these matters. In medicine, I'm very proactive and all that. But rest of the things, I'm pretty cool now. So anyway, so now we have got 42nd day of the war, which is 18th war day, which is when Balrama returns. Must be a Shravana Nakshatra, and it must be Amavasya or close to it, right? And therefore, what's the first day of the war, which is first war day, and therefore what's the first day of the pilgrimage. First day of the pilgrimage must be a Pushya Nakshatra, and so on. And we have got the moon phases for every single one of those things, and we can prove why we are saying that. The point is not so much that Pandit has said something, but why am I saying it? Why? In science, the why is so important, because otherwise I can say anything I like. Kuch bhi, I can assert anything, and nobody knows Sanskrit and nobody knows Mahabharata. So, I mean, but here I'm showing you the verses, I'm showing you what, and that's the way it occurs, right? That's the way it happens, right? In science. So now we have got that particular X and Y axis, we are filling it. You can see that this arrow now, pilgrimage starts on a Pushya Nakshatra, pilgrimage ends on a Shravana Nakshatra. The third Pushya, by the way, will occur somewhere in the war timeline. It's hidden. The 18th day of the war will be Shravana Nakshatra Amavasya. 14th war night is a waning phase crescent moonrise. War must begin near a full moon, S13 actually. It cannot begin on Amavasya. And those are the 18th day of the war. And by the way, therefore, war timeline, pilgrimage timeline, this is so inextricably interlinked that anybody who makes a mistake in any of one of these things completely finishes their own Mahabharata theory. Okay. And not just Mahabharata theory of war and pilgrimage timelines, but Bhishma Moksha goes as well. Along with that, it goes for a toss because it has to start in this war timeline. That's the whole huge problem. This Mahabharata is it's incredibly difficult for that reason. And for all of it to fit in 1 year is also more difficult, including Bhishma Moksha. So here we have got, Balarama starting on Pushya, ending on Shravana, and so on. And those are your two timelines respectively. And you can go to my WordPress blog, which is astronomyofindia.wordpress.com. And you can find out over there Balarama's pilgrimage corroborated by two different methods. I've shown the screen caps from JHora software also in that, and from CyberSky. Redshift also you can show it. I mean, you can show it virtually. Every software will show it because it is that straightforward. And there, you got November 1st, 3067 BC, day 1, the moon is at Pushya. Can you see it over there? And can you see that Altar, what I had shown earlier, that fork like that, and the single thing, and that is near Cancer. And on the 18th day of the war, you can see it over here. Can you see that the moon and sun are very close together, approaching? Basically, this is an approaching Amavasya. When the moon and sun come together, it is like an Amavasya, new moon day. And can you see that you can actually see it somewhere over here, the date, which is 12/12. Because a lot of people, there's all this rumor mongering going on that it was actually the 9th or something like that. That is the old theory. Here you can see very clearly that it is starting, basically the war day, first war day is 25th of November. Last war day is 12th of December. Simple as that, right? 25th to 12th. It is not the other way around. And I'm showing this again, that this sequence is exact. And this is an impossible test actually to pass for any Mahabharata theory. Nakshatra and Tithi, for both of these things to be there, for Balarama's pilgrimage, for war timeline, for this is a very sukshma thing, a very small, such a that's a cruel thing actually, this Mahabharata war timeline, pilgrimage timeline, right? Now, the question arises, and this is a very interesting question again. Why must a pilgrimage of such importance start on a Pushya Nakshatra day? पंडित क्या यार तुम पुष्य नक्षत्र को लेके बैठ गए? श्रवण पे शुरू करो, उत्तराषाढ़ पे शुरू करो. Why you want to bother with Pushya? Don't do all this. Scriptures are only meant to be thoda, matlab, you can bend it here and there. You can forget about the verse. ठीक है, 2 verses are wrong. क्या फर्क पड़ता है ना? Yeah, 4 verses are wrong. It doesn't make any difference, yaar. Don't start fighting. Just accept. It's okay. It's fine. होता है, मतलब आपके थियरी में सब बैठ रहा है, हमारे थियरी में कुछ नहीं बैठ रहा है, फिर भी हम we are able to do it. Why not? I'll tell you why. Even today, hardcore, if you go to the Tantra practitioners, you go to all the practitioners, you go to the gold shops. Do you see those big advertisements which are coming for gold? They are coming on Guru Pushya. Do you see that? When Guruvar and Pushya Nakshatra are combining, then they are coming. And some of those shops, by the way, in the old days, you could actually approach that shop and you could say, could you open it at sunrise for an extra fee? Could you open the shop at sunrise? And I'll come and collect that in that hora of sunrise. Right? In that time of sunrise when Guruvar and a Pushya, and this is actually, by the way, a Guruvar and a Pushya Nakshatra, which is occurring, which is the 1st of November, 3067 BC. And that is why Balarama is starting. By the way, it was never meant for gold of no, this gold. I mean, the materialistic world has become so materialistic. Everything has become gold. सोना चांदी में ही सब तोला जाता है. But this is actually not for that gold. This is for the gold of consciousness. You'll never understand it unless you chant, unless you do the Gayatri mantra. At sunrise, you do it. You'll get this thing of gold, right? So this gold aura which is there, that comes into you, right? And when this aura comes into you, then you are able to obliterate all your negativities and all that quite easily. So this is that Gayatri mantra thing. And this is very similar. For this reason, you start those sort of pilgrimages on a Pushya Nakshatra day. And this is the significance of that Pushya Nakshatra actually. So Ravi Pushya also, sometimes I put in my Mahabharat Samvat thing, which I am putting out with Ayurudra Gaur, which I don't know whether he's here today, but he may or may not have had time. That is the only thing with him. So, but normally we put out Ravi Pushya.
Taking a break right now.
Everything.
Yeah.
So
taking a break.
You're taking a break.
Not me.
Oh, right. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the Ravi Pushya also sometimes we give you, and we are giving that on our Mahabharat Samvat. We are giving Ravi Pushya and Guru Pushya for whoever wants, so that you are able to, people who are still following it, who know the importance of these things, are able to use those nakshatras to the best of their ability, right? The beautiful nakshatras, even if your Rashi is Dhanu Rashi, in which case the moon comes in the 8th from it when it is on a Pushya Nakshatra, even then it is not such a bad thing for you to start things on that day. That is my personal opinion. We can discuss it a bit later on some other workshop. And this is how your timeline of pilgrimage will look like. That yellow star is where the Pushya Nakshatra is. That is where you'll start, which is Altarf in Cancer. You'll start from here and you'll go around and round and round, and you'll go round and you'll come to that Pushya Nakshatra again 27 days later roughly. And then you will come from here, and then you will come over here back to that Shravana Nakshatra. Do you see this? So Pushyena Samprayatosmi Shravane Punaragataha. So starting from a Pushya and ending on a Shravana, and that 18 day at sunrise, well, it will become effectively an Amavasya, right? And that Shravana Nakshatra in 3067 BC, it actually starts approximately 11 or 1120 or something like that. And this is checkable on Jehora. You can check all this, the free software which is provided. If you put Julian calendar in that, and I'll show you actually one way of doing it in a moment, hopefully. And these are my moon phases for 3067 BCE. October 13th, Balrama is leaving the Pandavas. First quarter moon at Purva Uttara Bhadrapada. Then you got Purnima and Mrigashira star over there. Then you got the Tritiya Chaturthi, which is the November 1st sunrise at Pushya. Pilgrimage will start. Then you got the third quarter moon at Hasta. Then the Amavasya at Uttarashada. Then the Revati Nakshatra. Then the Purnima over here with the star over here. You can see in the war timeline. Then the third quarter moon at Swati. Then 14th war night with late war phase moonrise, and the war will end on Amavasya, 18th day of the war, which Shravana Nakshatra, which is also the 42nd day of Balrama's pilgrimage. Exact. It is so exact and so sukshma. And if you go into my book in chapter 3, I have shown you why a lot of the people, they are not getting this right. And you end up coming 6-7 days after the war and so on and so forth, right? Right. And therein is the timeline of the pilgrimage. And you will see all these things. So this is exactly the same as what I showed you over here, but except I am now showing you around the zodiac exactly those stars and how it is occurring, right? And the rigorous criteria of 42-day pilgrimage ends on the 18th day of the war, starts on a Pushya star, ends on a Shravana star, must end on Amavasya. All 5 criteria. Most people are not even satisfying one criteria. We are satisfying all 5 in 3067 BC, and we are showing you also. And so you can see for over here, for example, how it is. The moon at Pushya, moon at Shravana, and you got the 42 days. Okay. And that is how it will come, right? So that will end on the 18th day of the war. And how do you know that I am not lying or just, so you can see over here, I've got a screenshot over here from Redshift also. You can see the moon is approaching the sun on Amavasya, and that is basically Shravana Nakshatra, this is Capricorn, and that is the 12th of December of 3067 BCE, right? And this is again confirmable. It's not something, you got the software also now, you can confirm. And what happens if this is ignored? I will again say the entire moon phase for the year goes wrong. The start of the war becomes wrong. The end of the war becomes wrong. Balrama's pilgrimage becomes wrong. Bhishma Moksha start days goes wrong. So the Bhishma Moksha timeline also becomes wrong. If it is ignored, if all these things are ignored. And in that case, 60 plus observations of chapter 159, Drona Parva, 2 of chapter 161, and other observations of Balrama's pilgrimage, Gada Yuddha Parva, are all being ignored. So if somebody says it is a conflicting observation, then this is the problem. And these two, by the way, most people are saying it is a conflicting observation, and they start their war on Amavasya, which is a completely hoax. It is a complete falsity. And I've shown you why it is false, right? It cannot start on Amavasya. Now, what are the corollaries to this? I've said earlier that a solar eclipse can only occur on or just around a Amavasya, correct? So if a Amavasya itself cannot be the first day of the war, there can be no solar eclipse on the first day of the war. And that debunks a lot of other theories. And no lunar eclipse therefore can occur on the 15th day of the war, because it can only occur on a Purnima. So if you are saying Amavasya start to the war is impossible, then 15th day cannot be a Purnima. And therefore, we can confidently exclude 5561 BC and 3143 BC from the list of possible dates of the Mahabharata war. And 3162 BCE, by the way. All three start the war on Amavasya. I'm not sure why they have done this. Because this is so clear. It is so clear. It is so clear. And for those dates, anything 50 years before and after, one can check. You will find that not a single date among those dates will fit. I have done it. That's why I know. Right? 50 years. You can go every year, you can check. Because it's mathematical. There's nothing to it. You sit and every day you check one year or 2 years. Right? So in the last year, I've checked virtually every date in this. No other year it is going to occur. It is an impossibility. Only in 3067 BC you will find this occurring so perfectly. By the way, there are people who say, oh, Pandit, is just taking few verses here and there. Or 3067 BC people, they take few verses here and there. This list continues down. It has gone off long off the page. This is Udyoga Parva, Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Shanti Parva, Anushasan Parva also verses are there. You can see it, nearly entire Anushasan Parva verses I have put out in chapter 11. So we have taken all the verses into confidence. In fact, the 60 verses of Drona Parva, chapter 159, 161 are only taken into consideration by 3067 BC.